You know how people always say that routines are comforting? I used to believe that. Wake up, kiss the wife, drive around for hours picking up fares, and then come home to Emma, who always had a smile and a kind word. Life wasn't perfect, but it was stable. And stability? That was my thing. I'm Josh, a 36-year-old taxi driver in the heart of the city. Nothing glamorous about my life, but I like the rhythm of it. Emma, my wife, has always been my anchor. A school teacher with a passion for literature, she's the type of person who'd spend her Sundays grading papers and sipping tea, while I'd be half asleep on the couch pretending to care about whatever Netflix crime drama was playing. So, this particular night, my shift was running late as usual. It was one of those quiet stretches where the road seemed deserted, and my cab smelled faintly of old coffee and worn-out seat fabric. I stopped at the Hilton ritzy enough to make me wonder why the hell someone needed a taxi instead of their own chauffeur. This guy slides into the back seat, early 40s. Expensive suit, and a cologne so overpowering I swear it clung to the seats even after he got out. The type who casually tosses a $100 bill on the counter, but thinks tipping is for peasants. I ask him where he's headed and he just mumbles, "West Side condos." Fine by me. I wasn't in the mood to chat. But then as I'm driving, he pulls out his phone and starts talking in that hushed, syrupy tone that made my stomach churn for reasons I couldn't explain at first. "You were incredible tonight," he said, his voice dripping with affection. I rolled my eyes at the rearview mirror. Great. Another cheating asshole sweet-talking his side piece. Then I hear her name, Emma. My knuckles went white around the steering wheel. Emma wasn't a rare name, but the way he said it intimate, like it was coated in honey, felt wrong. Felt personal. I couldn't help myself. I adjusted the rear view mirror slightly, just to see his face. The bastard was smiling like he'd just hit the jackpot. "Next week's gonna be even better," he continued. "Our little anniversary, huh?" My heart stopped. Anniversary? My mind was racing, a mix of anger and confusion swirling inside me. I took a deep breath and forced my voice to stay calm. "West Side condos, you said?" "Yeah. Just take your time, though." "I'm in no rush," he replied, chuckling to himself like the world revolved around him. "Oh, I took my time, all right. Took every long, convoluted detour I could think of. And as I drove, I threw out a casual question, trying to steady my voice. "Big plans next week?" He grinned in the rearview mirror, like he was proud of himself. "You could say that. Something special with someone close." My stomach twisted. I dropped him off without another word and drove to a nearby parking lot. The car felt suffocating, the smell of his cologne still lingering in the air. I stared at the dashboard, the quiet around me deafening. Emma, my Emma. What the hell was going on? I sat there for what felt like hours, trying to piece together what I just heard. The rational part of my brain kept telling me it had to be a coincidence. There were thousands of Emmas in the city, right? But deep down, in that gut-wrenching way you just know when something's off, I couldn't shake it. His voice, his tone, he wasn't talking about just anyone. He was talking about my wife. By the time I got home, Emma was already in bed. The soft glow of her bedside lamp cast a warm light on her face, her chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. She looked so innocent. My heart ached looking at her, but now there was this festering doubt. Was I crazy? Was I overthinking everything? I kissed her on the forehead and climbed into bed, staring at the ceiling until sleep finally dragged me under. The next morning, I played it cool. Emma was her "Good night on the road?" she asked her back to me. "Same old." I mumbled, watching her closely. She moved effortlessly, pouring her tea and humming some tune she must have picked up from her students. No signs of guilt, no strange behavior, Was I losing it? But then I remember the guy's comment about the anniversary. If he was telling the truth, something would show up on her calendar. Emma and I had shared a digital calendar for years, a way to coordinate her school events and my erratic driving schedule. She wasn't great with tech, so I'd always been the one to handle it. She trusted me implicitly, which made what I did next feel like a betrayal. While she was in the shower, I opened her laptop and logged into the calendar. It felt like my hands weren't even mine, moving on their own. There it was. A business trip scheduled for next Thursday. Just one night, marked with a vague note. Workshop. I felt the blood drain from my face. Emma had been a teacher for over a decade, and in all that time, she'd never once mentioned an overnight workshop. If she had to travel for work, she always made a big deal out of it, asking me to check her travel routes or pack her bag just right. But this was too quiet, too convenient. My head spun with questions. Where was she really going? Was that guy whoever he was meeting her there? I knew what I had to do, but it made me feel sick just thinking about it. I needed to know the truth, and the only way to do that was to follow her. The week crawled by like a car stuck in first gear. I went through the motions at work, picking up passengers and dropping them off, all while my mind stayed stuck on Emma and that business trip. I'd never been a suspicious guy before. Emma and I had built our lives on trust, or so I thought. When Thursday rolled around, she was up early, humming as she packed her suitcase. She wasn't stressed, which was odd because Emma stressed about everything packing, forgetting something, double-checking hotel reservations. This time, though, she was calm, almost too calm. What time's your workshop? I asked casually over coffee. She glanced up, not missing a beat. Starts tomorrow morning, but I'm heading out tonight to get settled. It's at a hotel downtown. Sounds nice, I replied, forcing a smile. Want me to drive you? Her eyes darted to mine for a fraction of a second before she shook her head. No, it's fine. I've already got everything set. That was lie number one. Emma hated city driving. She'd rather let me or an Uber handle it than deal with traffic herself. But I didn't push. I needed her to think everything was normal. When she left, suitcase in hand and a quick peck on my cheek, I waited exactly 10 minutes before grabbing my keys. Her car had GPS, but I'd installed an AirTag in her bag a few months ago, not because I didn't trust her back then, but because she was notorious for losing things. That tiny tracker was about to be my saving grace. I followed the signal to a mid-range hotel on the edge of downtown. Nothing fancy, but not a dump either. The kind of place where people check in with one name but leave with another. My stomach churned as I parked a block away and watched her from the distance. She walked inside, suitcase rolling behind her, and disappeared into the lobby. My pulse raced as I debated my next move. Should I go in? Pretend I'm a guest and confront her right then and there? Or should I wait and see what happens? My gut told me to wait. So I stayed in the car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. 2 hours passed before I saw him. The man from my cab. Same suit, same cocky stride. He walked into the hotel without hesitation, like he belonged there. I snapped a photo of him on my phone, my hands shaking as I did. I didn't need proof for anyone else. I needed proof for myself of the part of me that still wanted to believe this wasn't happening. When I saw the AirTag signal move to the elevators, I knew they were together. My heart sank. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was real. Emma, my Emma, was upstairs with this guy, and I had no idea what I was supposed to do next. I sat there in my car, staring at the elevator icon on my phone screen as it stopped on the 5th floor. The AirTag wasn't moving now, just sitting in place. I couldn't breathe. My hands were trembling, and my stomach churned with a mix of rage, hurt, and disbelief. What the hell was I supposed to do? Storm in there? Knock on every door until I found them? What if I was wrong? What if this was all one big misunderstanding? But the photo of that guy, the guy I'd driven, the guy who'd mentioned Emma by name burned on my phone screen, daring me to confront the truth. I needed more than assumptions. If I was going to blow my marriage apart, I needed to be absolutely sure. After a quick Google search, I found the hotel's front desk number. My voice was steady, though my insides felt like they were about to collapse. Hi, I'm trying to reach a guest. My wife's staying there for a workshop, and I wanted to surprise her. Can you connect me to Emma Marshall's room? The receptionist paused for a moment, then cheerfully replied, Oh, of course. She's in room 512. Let me dash. Click. I hung up. Room 512. It was like a punch to the gut. My legs moved on autopilot, carrying me out of the car and toward the hotel lobby. My heart pounded with every step, and by the time I was inside, I felt like I was going to burst. The elevator ride to the 5th floor was the longest of my life. Each second felt like an eternity, the silence suffocating me. When I reached the door, I froze. Room 512 was right in front of me. My mind raced with every possible scenario. Was she alone? Was she with him? Were they dash? No. I didn't let myself finish the thought. I raised my hand to knock, but stopped short. What would I even say? What if she opened the door and looked at me with those big, innocent eyes, the ones I'd trusted for years? What if she lied to my face? Could I handle that? And then, like a coward, I took a step back. I couldn't face her. Not yet. Instead, I turned and walked quickly back to the elevator, my breaths coming in shallow gasps. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I drove home, my hands gripping the wheel so tight it felt like I might snap it in half. When I got there, I logged into Emma's email account. She never changed her password, one of those quirks that had made life easier for us in the past, but now felt like betrayal waiting to happen. It didn't take long to find her hotel confirmation email. There it was, plain as day. Room 512, check-in Thursday, check-out Friday. But something else caught my eye. An email from 2 weeks ago. Subject line, anniversary plans. My chest tightened as I opened it. It wasn't from a hotel or a workshop organizer. It was from him, James Carlton. His name stared back at me like a slap to the face. I read the email, my anger boiling over with each word. It wasn't just a fling. They had been planning this for weeks. Dinner reservations, a night to remember. They even joked about how exciting it was to finally be able to celebrate without sneaking around. My hands shook as I forwarded the email to my own account. Then I slammed the laptop shut, my heart racing. This was real. There was no misunderstanding anymore. But as the anger began to cool, a new thought crept in. If this was a planned affair, why had James seemed nervous during our ride? Why had he been so careful with his words? Something about this didn't add up. I stared at the wall for hours, torn between the pain of betrayal and the nagging feeling that there was more to this story. And when the AirTag finally moved the next morning, signaling that I wanted the truth, all of it. When Emma walked through the front door the next morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at my coffee. It had gone cold an hour ago, but I didn't care. My stomach was a mess of knots, and my heart felt like it was about to jump out of my chest. Morning, she said, walking in with her usual energy, dropping her bag by the door. She looked fresh, like she'd had the best sleep of her life. The sight of her made me want to punch a hole in the wall. How could she look so normal after what she'd done? Hey, I said, keeping my voice neutral. How was the workshop? Oh, the usual. Long sessions, boring speakers. She laughed, opening the fridge and pulling out a bottle of water. But at least the hotel had decent coffee. The way she lied so easily made my blood boil. My fists clenched under the table. I had two options: confront her now and let my anger explode, or try to stay calm and get the whole story. I chose the latter, even though it felt like holding back a tidal wave. Sounds productive, I replied, forcing a smile. Did you meet anyone interesting? Her hand froze for a fraction of a second before she turned to look at me. Not really, just the usual faces from other schools. Why? No reason, I said, taking a sip of my cold coffee to hide the fury building inside me. Just curious. She shrugged and sat down across from me, her expression completely neutral. But I wasn't buying it. I couldn't. I'd seen the emails. I'd followed her to that hotel. And yet, here she was, acting like nothing had happened. It was almost impressive, the way she kept the mask on so perfectly. Emma, I said finally, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. I need to ask you something. Sure, she said, tilting her head, her tone light and casual. What's up? Who's James Carlton? The change in her expression was immediate. Her smile faltered, her eyes widened, and for the first time, she looked rattled. What are you talking about? She said, her voice a little too high-pitched. I slammed my coffee cup down on the table, the sound echoing through the kitchen. Don't lie to me, Emma. I know you weren't at a workshop. I followed you to the hotel. I saw him go in, and I saw the email. So don't lie to me. Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought she might actually faint. But then she did something I didn't expect. She laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not a mocking one either. It was a laugh filled with something else, something darker. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms, and said, So you know. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I snapped, my anger boiling over. How long, Emma? How long has this been going on? But instead of answering, she just shook her head. You have no idea what's really happening, do you? You think this is about an affair? You think I've been sneaking around behind your back because I'm unhappy? God, Josh, you really don't know me at all. Her words hit me like a freight train. Then explain it to me. I demanded. Tell me what the hell is going on. She leaned forward, lowering her voice to a whisper like someone might be listening. James isn't my lover, Josh. He's my target. What the hell does that mean? It means, she said, her tone cold and sharp, that James Carlton is a criminal. And I have proof. Proof he doesn't want anyone to see. I blinked, completely thrown. Wait, what? You're blackmailing him. Her eyes didn't waver. You could call it that. I call it justice. My mind was spinning. Blackmail? Justice? What the hell was she talking about? You're a teacher, I said, my voice cracking. What do you mean, justice? What proof? She stood up, walking to her bag and pulling out a manila folder. Tossing it onto the table in front of me, she said, This, everything I needed to bring him down. I stared at the folder, my hands trembling as I reached for it. Inside were photos, documents, and emails evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and worse. James Carlton wasn't just some sleazy businessman. He was a dangerous man who had been ruining lives for years. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Because I knew you'd try to stop me, she said, her tone softer now. And because I wasn't sure you believed me. I stared at her, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and anger. I thought I was uncovering an affair. Instead, I'd stumbled into something far more dangerous. And now, I had to decide. Did I stand by her side or walk away from the mess she dragged us into? The manila folder sat on the table between us, daring me to open it again. My hands were still trembling as I sifted through the papers, each document more damning than the last. Fraud, money laundering, even ties to organized crime was like something out of a movie. And Emma, my Emma, was the one holding the smoking gun. I looked up at her, barely able to find my voice. "You've been blackmailing him with this?" She nodded, her expression grim. "I didn't have a choice, Josh. He ruined people's lives, families, businesses, you name it. I stumbled across this while helping a student's family with some financial issues. One thing led to another, and suddenly, I had enough to bury him. And you thought the best way to handle it was to meet him in secret? At a hotel." I hissed, my anger bubbling to the surface. "Do you have any idea how dangerous this is?" Her eyes softened, and for the first time, she looked vulnerable. "I know it's risky, but someone had to do something. And I couldn't tell you. I knew you'd try to stop me." "You're damn right I would have stopped you," I snapped, standing up and pacing the room. "This isn't some schoolyard fight, Emma. This guy is dangerous. What if he finds a way to retaliate? What if he hurts you? Or us?" Her jaw tightened. "That's why I was careful. Everything I've done has been calculated. I've been gathering this for months, waiting for the right moment to turn it all over to the authorities." Months. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. "You've been lying to me for months, Emma. Do you even hear yourself?" She stood, stepping closer to me. "I didn't lie to you. I kept you out of it to protect you. There's a difference." "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, you don't get to spin this like you're some kind of hero. You've been sneaking around behind my back, risking your life. And for what? So you could play vigilante?" Her face hardened, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. "I thought you'd understand." "Well, I don't." I shot back, my voice rising. "I can't understand why you keep something this huge from me. We're supposed to be a team, Emma. You don't get to make decisions like this on your own." She looked away, her shoulders slumping. For a moment, the room was silent, the weight of everything hanging between us like a storm cloud. Then she whispered, "I didn't want you to see me like this." "Like what?" I asked, my voice softening despite my anger. "Like someone who has to stoop to his level to get justice," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm supposed to be better than this. I'm supposed to be someone you can trust. But I couldn't sit back and do nothing, Josh. Not when I knew I could stop him." Her words hit me in a way I didn't expect. I saw the fear in her eyes, the doubt. She wasn't just keeping this from me because she didn't trust me. She was ashamed of what she'd done, what she'd become. I sank back into my chair, running a hand through my hair. "So what happens now?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "I meet with him one last time," she said, her tone firm. "I have everything I need to ensure he leaves me and the people he's hurt alone." Then I turned. "You think he's just going to walk away?" I asked, incredulous. "People like him don't just roll over, Emma. They fight, and they win." "Not this time," she said, her eyes hardening. "I've made sure of it." I wanted to believe her, but every instinct in me screamed that this was far from over. If she was going to do this, I couldn't let her do it alone. Even if I hated how she'd handled things, I couldn't just walk away. "Fine," I said after a long pause. "But if you're meeting him, I'm coming with you." Her eyes widened. "No, absolutely not. It's not up for debate," I said firmly. "If you're risking your life, I'm going to be there. End of discussion." She stared at me, her jaw tightening, but she didn't argue. Instead, she nodded slowly, a resigned look on her face. "Okay, she said softly. "But you have to trust me." I didn't respond. Trust felt like a foreign concept right now. But one thing was certain. I wasn't letting her face this alone. The plan was simple on the surface. Emma would meet James Carlton one final time, hand over the evidence she had collected, and make it clear that she had backups ready to go to the authorities if anything happened to her or anyone connected to her. It was supposed to be clean. No more risks. No loose ends. But I wasn't naive enough to think it would actually be that simple. The meeting was set for Saturday evening at another hotel, one even more discreet than the last. Emma insisted on keeping the location private until the last minute, only texting me the details once she was en route. I knew it was her way of trying to keep me from intervening, but I wasn't about to let her face this alone. I followed her as soon as I got the address, my heart pounding the entire drive. When I arrived, I parked far enough away to stay out of sight, but close enough to act quickly if things went sideways. Emma's AirTag gave me her exact location, and I watched as the signal moved to a private conference room on the second floor. My stomach churned as I sat there, waiting. Every passing second felt like an hour. What was happening in that room? Was she okay? Should I go in? The logical part of me said to trust her plan, but the rest of me, the part that couldn't bear the thought of losing her, was screaming to barge in and get her out of there. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the AirTag moved. Emma was on the move, heading back toward the lobby. I started my car, ready to follow her home, but then I noticed something odd. Another signal appeared, a second AirTag. I frowned, checking the map. The second signal was coming from the same conference room Emma had just left. It wasn't hers, I was sure of that. So whose was it? And why was it moving now? I didn't have time to think. My instincts took over, and I jumped out of the car, racing toward the hotel entrance. As I approached the lobby, I saw Emma walking out, her expression calm, but her hands clenched into fists. She didn't see me, too focused on heading to her car. But then I saw him, James Carlton. He was just a few steps behind her, his face twisted in barely concealed rage. And he wasn't alone. 2 other men flanked him, their expressions cold and professional. These weren't businessmen, they were muscle, hired to do one thing, and one thing only. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. Emma was completely unaware, walking straight toward her car, and Carlton, with his goons in tow, was closing the distance fast. "Emma," I shouted, running toward her. She spun around, her eyes widening when she saw me. "Josh, what are you dash?" Before she could finish, Carlton's voice cut through the air. "Ah, Mr. Marshall. So nice of you to join us." Emma's face paled as she realized what was happening. She stepped closer to me, her hand gripping my arm. "Josh, you need to leave. Now." "I'm not going anywhere," I said, glaring at Carlton. "What's this about?" Carlton smirked, his eyes cold and calculating. "Your wife here seems to think she can threaten me and walk away unscathed, but I don't take kindly to threats." "She's not threatening you," I said, stepping in front of Emma. "She's holding you accountable." "That's cute," Carlton said, his smirk widening. "But accountability is a two-way street, and I have a feeling your wife isn't as untouchable as she thinks." Before I could respond, one of his goons reached into his jacket, pulling out a gun. The world seemed to slow as I pushed Emma behind me, my mind racing for a way out. "Let her go," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "This is between you and me now." Carlton laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Oh, I think not. See, I worked too hard to let some meddling little teacher ruin everything." But before he could say anything else, the sound of sirens filled the air. Red and blue lights flashed as police cars swarmed the hotel entrance. Carlton's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of pure panic. Emma stepped out from behind me, her phone in hand. "Did you really think I didn't have a backup plan?" The cops moved in fast, disarming Carlton's men and taking him into custody. Emma and I stood frozen as the chaos unfolded around us, the adrenaline slowly draining from my body. When it was over, I turned to her, my voice barely above a whisper. "You called them." She nodded, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and exhaustion. "I told you, Josh. I had everything under control. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to yell at her for putting herself in danger. But all I could do was pull her into my arms and hold her tight. For now, the nightmare was over. But the fallout? That was just beginning. The drive home was silent, except for the hum of the tires on the pavement. Emma stared out the window, her arms crossed, while I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The night's events had left a sour taste in my mouth, relief that we'd made it out alive, mixed with a lingering anger that we'd been in this mess to begin with. Finally, I couldn't take the silence anymore. "You could have told me," I said, my voice low but tense. "From the start, Emma, you didn't have to do this alone." She turned to me, her face a mixture of guilt and defiance. "I didn't want you caught up in this, Josh. I didn't want you to get hurt." "Do I look like I didn't get hurt?" I snapped, slamming my palm against the wheel. "You lied to me for months. You let me think the worst. Do you know what that felt like?" Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment, I thought she wasn't going to answer. But then she sighed, her voice soft. "I didn't want you to think less of me." That stopped me in my tracks. I glanced over at her, confusion and anger warring inside me. "Think less of you? Emma, you've always been the strongest person I know. But this wasn't strength. This was reckless. You could have been killed." Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. I know it was dangerous, but I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Not when I had the power to stop him. I shook my head, focusing back on the road. And what now? What happens when Carlton's lawyers get involved? When his goons come looking for revenge? "They won't," she said firmly. "The evidence I handed over is airtight. He's not getting out of this, Josh. Not this time." Her confidence should have been reassuring, but it wasn't. There was something about the way she said it, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. When we got home, I dropped onto the couch, my head in my hands. The weight of everything that had happened felt like a ton of bricks crushing me. Emma sat beside me, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. "Josh," she said softly, "I know I screwed up. I know I should have told you sooner, but I did what I thought was right." I looked up at her, my anger ebbing away, replaced by exhaustion. "I don't know how to move forward from this, Emma. I feel like I don't even know who you are anymore." Her face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw how deeply this was affecting her. "I'm still me," she said, her voice cracking. "I'm still the woman you married. I made a choice. A terrible, reckless choice. But I did it for the right reasons. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to hold on to the image of the woman I'd fallen in love with. The woman who had been my anchor for so many years. But the events of the last few days had shattered that image, leaving me questioning everything. "I need time," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "I need to figure out if we can come back from this." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'll wait. However long it takes, I'll wait." We sat there in silence, the distance between us palpable. I didn't know what the future held for us, but one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again.